Hello, are you a small business person struggling with the challenges of running your business? Are you a farmer or a person living in regional and rural Australia struggling with the yearly challenges of droughts, floods, succession planning, managing import costs, etc.? Are you a parent trying to balance the demands of family, career and community? Are you in business and trying to achieve your own targets as well as trying to work with your clients and your stakeholders to deal with their challenges? Or are you just finding it tough going through the day-to-day trying to deal with the challenges that life throws at you? If you are, what are your strategies that you use to help you bounce through these good and bad times? Hello, my name is Dennis Hoiberg. And I work with an organisation called Lessons Learned Consulting. And what I want to talk about in these series of webinars through 2013 is these strategies that people can adopt to help them deal with these challenges of life. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go and grab a cup of coffee, or even though it's a Monday night, grab a glass of wine. And over the next 30 or 40 minutes or so, let us talk about the secrets to developing your own resilience to deal with these situations and challenges through life. This is the first of our 2013 webinars. They follow our successful series in 2012 and are based on the response that we received from the participants from our programs last year. Whilst Lessons Learnt Consulting does many other things, one of the niches that we work on is in the area of resilience. And resilience is best defined as that ability to bounce through the good and bad times of life. And I want to talk to you through this series of webinars for you as a parent, as a leader, as an employee, as a community member, and also as a person. The journey I want to take you through this particular webinar is I want to use this as a bit of an overview to talk about resilience, the nature of it, critically what it is and what it isn't, some key messages that surround the topic of resilience. I want to stress to you and create to you why I think resilience is so important and such a critical life skill for us to use. I want to talk about some of the issues to look for, or some of the symptoms to look for that might indicate reducing resilience. I want to introduce a thing called the resilient mindset, and that's as much content as we'll do tonight. Because then I want to talk about our structure and our schedule of webinars for 2013, and I want to end up this presentation giving you some extra bonus material about some of the work we've been recently doing in the topic of resilience. I guess I first got interested in this topic of resilience as the work I was doing in organisations and communities in the area of change. And I observed some people who would cope with change very well and other people who would struggle with that change. And of course that prompted me to think, why the differences? Why would two people who seem to be of the same motivation, same intelligence, same background, essentially on the outside the same attitudes, why would one person cope with change much better than another? And that got me very interested in this topic of emotional resilience. And from those early days of having an interest in that topic, I now work with communities around Australia, organisations, I work with teams, I work with senior leaders, I work with sports people now, and also fortunately, and feel very lucky to be doing this, working with schools and school kids and also school teachers on this topic of resilience. I just think that if we can start getting people talking about and giving people some basic and practical skills in terms of resilience, it'll help them make much more practical choices. That's why I'm so passionate about this topic, and why I really do thank, at this stage, the 38 people who enrolled in this webinar and attending it. Hopefully this can be the start of an ongoing discussion, an ongoing professional development program, and hopefully we can provide you with the support that I'm often asked for when I talk to my clients around Australia and now overseas. I guess that some of the key messages I want to give you that sort of drives my view of the world and my experience when it comes to resilience strategies these key messages of the first one being you have to learn to look after yourselves. Now, this is such an obvious and simple statement, but I would like to give you some feedback. When I observe people going through change, the last person that we tend to look after is ourselves. We tend to look after everyone else. And there's a truth in my game, and the truth is this. You have to be able to look after yourself before you can look after your family, or in order to look after your family, in order to look after your friends, and also in order to look after your business and your activities. I believe this personal resilience is a core capacity or core competence for people to deal with life. I'd also like to say that resilience is a process, not an event. Sometimes people come into my office and acknowledge that they're in a bit of trouble. And they say to me, Dennis, can you help me build my resilience strategies? My immediate reaction is that it's too late. But I obviously understanding what they're saying. Because resilience to me is a process. And one of the things that we say at Lessons Learnt is resilience is really a new way of thinking and a new way of living your life. Next key message is the material that we talk about in terms of resilience is no longer 6 degrees separation. I believe it's 1. And when I look at the 38 people who are on this workshop, and I know some of the names, a lot I don't know, so it's a pleasure for you. It's an honour for you to listen for me to think that you're listening to me. I know that there are people who are listening to me who have been directly touched by this stuff about resilience. Or if you haven't been directly touched by it, then you know someone who has been. And I'll give you some statistics in a moment about the Australian situation. It indicates to me the stuff that we're talking about in resilience, it's just people are just being touched by it. And one of the things I notice when I do my workshops and my presentations is that the people who come up to me after my sessions, everyone has a story. And usually the stories are both inspiring, challenging, and really meaningful. So this material is no longer 6 degrees separation, it's 1. Another key message is it's not how other people see it, it's how you see yourself. A lot of the stuff that we're going to do in our follow-up modules is about getting you to think about how you see yourself and how you think about yourself and the world around you. Because if that's not in a good space, my belief is nothing else you will be in a good space. So it's not how other people see it, it's how you see yourself. And this is one of the key messages I give when I do my workshops around Australia. How do you see yourself and how do you see the world around you? The human spirit's a wonderful thing. I work with individuals and I work with communities and organisations that are going through a fair amount of challenge. But one of the things I observe is a lot of people I work with, regardless of what's happening in their life, they keep turning up and they keep turning up and they keep turning up, and that's a thing called the human spirit. And I'm a very strong believer in the spirit. And I think if we can listen to the spirit and believe in the spirit, even though it will be tough times for us, most people will get through the challenges. I only ask you to think of people who are going through earthquakes, floods, bushfires, and they get through it. And it's an articulation of the spirit. And the last key message I want to give you, and this is my favourite message that I talk to people, and that is I want you to start questioning that concept of normal. Because the more I work in this space and the more I work with organisations and family going through change, the more I understand that there's no such thing as normal. And there's a saying that I use with a lot of my people, and that is, wherever you are, be there. It may not be nice, it may not be good, it may not be the best situation to be in, but that's where you are. And we need to deal with where you are, not where you want to be, because that you may never achieve that. So there's some key messages. So what is resilience? I've already talked about this capacity to bounce back, but I thought I should say what it isn't. And I want to tell a story about a presentation I was doing in Sydney last year for a group of accountants. And I noticed a lady who was, and yes, I know she'd be smiling to herself now because I told her I was going to tell her this story. She came to me after my presentation on emotional resilience, and she said to me, Dennis, when I first saw this topic on the agenda, I thought it was a mistake, but I thought I would attend the session on emotional resilience. It was one of those post-lunch sessions that I'm sure people thought were sort of a filler for the agenda. And I also think that she came to me only because all the other sessions she'd booked into were booked out. But she said to me after my presentation, Dennis, I now get this thing about resilience, and she made the point that she thought I was talking about something else. But she told me her story, and she just sent me a little note that can I read that out? not only she listened to this presentation, but also her husband and her 3 teenage kids. So welcome. Honoured to have you on board. She came to me after my presentation and said, Dennis, partner of a second-tier accounting company, her mother has got advanced Alzheimer's. Every night she leaves leaves work and goes to the hospital and spends at least an hour with her mother, knowing full well that the mother doesn't know who she is or why she's there, but she obviously loves her mother very much and honours her and is prepared to go through the hour. She'll then leave there and go home and have 3 very active teenage children, and she's with a husband who she loves very much, she tells me, and I'm sure he loves her, and she's made the comment, they don't see much of each other, like passing ships in the night, taking kids all around the place. In the morning she'll leave home, leave home, go to work and be confronted with customer issues or client issues, I would call them, staff issues, billing issues, quality control issues, report writing issues, other partner dynamics, and is expected to show, and I'm sure does show, strong leadership behaviour. And she said, Dennis, I get what you mean by resilience. And I remember saying to me, she thinks she's okay, but just the nature of her work, the nature of her life requires resilience. So what resilience isn't? It isn't about people who are suffering from depression. People say, when we first start introducing this topic of resilience, people scratch their heads and say, well, Dennis, I don't have mental issues. Of course, we all do, just to the extent of them. So it's not only just about people who are suffering from depression. It's not only about when things go bad in your life, That's one of the messages that I want to give. This is not just one of those situations where not one of those skills you apply when things are going bad. It's also one of the skills you apply when you're going through some good times. It isn't about when you've lost the plot. I've heard people use that expression. I'm sure we all have sometime in our life lost the plot. It isn't only about the advice you get about pulling your socks up and getting back on the horse. And certainly it isn't about toughening the whatever up, I often hear people say to me, in fact, up in Queensland, they said, oh, Dennis, you should tell them just to, put a bit of concrete in the tea and toughen up. Unfortunately, that's not always the easiest thing to do. So that's what it isn't. But I think there is an underlying message about this resilience that I like to give people, and that is that life can be challenging. We need to deal with that. It's just about the choices we're going to make, about how we're going to deal with those things. And to me, resilience is about choices and about strategy. And it is that capacity, I think, it is that capacity, I've got in front of myself here with my slides, it is that capacity, I think, to bounce forward, to recognise and accept those times in life that challenges, recognise we're all going to have our own symptoms and reactions, and then have our own strategies to deal with them. There was a time that I used to call it bounce back. But then I used to observe people who used to go through change, or were going through change, and those people who seemed to really prosper through the change process were those ones who have accepted that it's happened and we needed to just move on, deal with it and move on. The people that we still deal with who have gone through some natural disasters are the ones that we worry about, who are still angry that it happened. Well, it did. We now need to move on. So why am I so passionate about it? That's an introduction about resilience. Why am I so passionate about it? I just very, very quickly wanted to go through some of the statistics that we know is happening in Australia today, just for people to recognise that this is stuff, I think, about 1 degree of separation. And it is part of our life. It's not something that we can no longer just push away and pretend it's someone else's issues. But look, very quickly, and this comes from a report that I'll refer to in a moment, very quickly, here's some statistics. 1 in 5 Australians will experience some form of mental illness sometime in our life, And the most popular form of, or most common, I should say, depression, bipolar and anxiety disorders, substance abuse. We know 20% of Australians will experience a thing called depression sometime in our life. There's that 1 in 5 number. Those people who are now listening to me, and it's now up to 41, do you know anyone in your life who's suffered from depression, And look, they're 20% are the people that are diagnosed with depression. There's probably a heap of other people who aren't actually haven't had it diagnosed. We also know something like 13% of Australians will experience anxiety disorder sometime in our lives. We also know that suicide remains the major cause of death, unfortunately, accounting for more accidents and more deaths in Australia than transport accidents. Now, I know this can be very challenging, very sad for people who I'm sure are listening to me on this webinar, certainly have listened to me in the past. But it is a fact. And this is why I feel honoured to be able to work in this space of resilience, because I reckon if we can do this stuff right, we actually might be able to make a difference. I'm getting a lot of this statistic from a report produced last year called A Contributing Life, 2012 National Report Card on Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. If anyone would like to copy that, either email me or just pull it off the net. We also know in Australia in 2010, they're just on 2,361 deaths through suicide. They're the official ABS figures. That's nearly 5 a day. We also know, folks, that of those figures, I'm still getting used to this technology, so I still get nervous with my voice. Of those 2,361, 1,816 were men and 545 females. Men are 3 times more likely in Australia to die through suicide. And in our follow-up modules, we'll talk a little bit more about that and why that is, and some of the strategies we can start to give people. Now, they're the official figures, but we also know through organisations such as the Mental Health Council of Australia and indeed the Australian Bureau of Statistics that due to reporting issues, the real suicide rate might be typically 30 to 40% higher than official figures. The real figure might be up near somewhere near 3,300 people. But let's just deal with the official figures, and I don't know about you, but they're big numbers. And I think as a nation, we can't hide away from this stuff. We also know that in the Mental Health Council of Australia, and it was brought up, reinforced in the report last year, that there's something like 200 Australians a day may be attempting suicide. We also know that, unfortunately, here's another statistic that always blows me away, that of the young men 20 to 24 in 2009, 2010, 22.1% of those people died through suicide. And I just think that's outrageous figures. And quite frankly, my life is about trying to help people deal with those things and hopefully put strategies in place that might be able to address those issues. We also know that the cost of Australian business due to stress-related time off is around $20 billion for workplace of loss of productivity and workplace participation. The Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme told us in 2009-2010 that 31.1 million prescriptions for mental health-related medications, and indeed Australia has the highest rate of prescriptions of antidepressants than the top 18 OECD countries. Now, they're not figures that, as a nation, we should be proud of and that we should not do anything about. And I think there are things we can do about it. But all this means to me, folks, is that you have to be resilient in normal life, whatever that normal life is. And then, as I say to the kids I work with, life happens to you in terms of relationship issues, financial issues, career issues, health issues, and all those other things happen to us that we just need to be resilient to get through. Just the normal life before life throws us a few curly ones. So that's why I'm so passionate about this stuff. In the context of just what we know happens every day, I also know people who are listening to me probably are undergoing their own challenges. So what do we mean by this stuff about resilience? Well, I do want to refer briefly to the World Health Organization, who talks about resilience in the context of mental health. And the World Health Organization tells us that mental health is a state of well-being. It refers to emotional, psychological and spiritual health and how we feel about ourselves and the world around us. Now, that's the formal definition. The kids nowadays have a great description saying you've got to be comfortable in your own skin. That's a great, I reckon, description of mental health. It's also a great description of resilience. Those of us who are comfortable in our own skin are probably going to be highly resilient as opposed to those of us who don't have that high degree of comfort. But folks, what happens is all of us go through change. And when we go through change, our emotions and our feelings become out of balance, because that's the nature of change. Now, what happens is when we do go through change, our emotions things get out of balance, and for some of us, they remain out of balance for what we call an extended period of time. And for some of us, when they do remain out of balance for an extended period of time, they can cause a person significant impairment, affecting their ability to function. Then it becomes what we call a clinical problem. There's the definition. And in our later modules, we talk more about that definition and a thing I call the resilience journey. But suffice to say at this stage, in terms of your own resilience, a couple of key questions for you, I think. First one is, and this is not only for you, but also people in your world who you might be concerned about, his first question is, how are you sleeping? Because we do know the first sign of reduced resilience is your sleep patterns might be disturbed. And if it has been disturbed, for how long? Because the extended period of time we typically talk about is that 14-day period. It's important not to overreact to this stuff, I believe, but there are some benchmarks we look for in making sure we can have real conversations about how people are feeling. And the other question, of course, I want you to ask you about is, if you are going through a disturbed sleep, how are you feeling about yourself, your future, and your circumstances? Because if you're low on those three things, you've probably got some level of depression of some type. And what we need to do is put in some strategies to help you. So, and the question is, when you do, sorry, I might have had, when you do have experienced someone in your life who might be going through some of those tough times, and even yourself, the conversation again. This is the communication strategies that will be later on in our series. Questions about what can we do to help you to feel better about these issues, and is there anything that we should be concerned about in terms of helping people through and addressing some of these issues. So there's some of the questions. And again, one of our modules is about communication, and it's a key module, especially for people that It's a key module, especially for people that we might be concerned about in our life. So there's the definition, there's the context, there's some of the key questions, and people often ask me, what should we look for, Dennis? And unfortunately, I can't tell you. There's no one size fits all. But there are some questions we can ask, and some conversations we have, because we know there are a range of emotions, thoughts, behaviours and physical symptoms. And some of those emotions are around sadness and guilt. Some of the thoughts are around self-criticism, pessimism, confusion, negative thoughts. Some of the behaviours are around withdrawal, worrying, loss of motivation. Some of the other symptoms are around lack of energy, tiredness, aches and pains. Now, when you look at those emotions, thoughts, behaviours and physical symptoms, I guess my question to you is, have you ever experienced them? Because let me tell you, I have. Now, does it mean my resilience is starting to drop? Possibly. It may not. But they are mechanisms for us to be aware of what's happening. And as we go through this series of modules, these webinars every month, we'll give you other clues in terms of being able to identify signs of reducing resilience and what do you do about them. The key thing I want you to do in terms of looking after yourself and in terms of and also looking after other people is this 14-day rule. How well are you looking after yourself? Are you monitoring yourself? And if you do have issues after 14 days, not sleeping or the concerns, should you be doing something about that to help yourself? Because one of the things for every cause, for every symptom, there's an action. I think I think the saying is, for every action, there's a reaction. And this flowchart we're seeing here is a strategy we use, or a mechanism we use to help people develop resilient strategies. For every stimulus, there's a response. If we are what we call resilient, we are probably competent and confident in ourself and our ability to handle issues. So we go into what we call a problem-solving behaviour, which is healthy. If we're not resilient or we lack confidence or competence, we go into what we call the flight or fight behaviour. Flight behaviour is obviously avoidance and trying to ignore. Fight behaviour is trying to dominate it. But either way, we know it's not functional. It's an emotional dysfunctionality. So what we need to do is give you some skills in order to develop those flight and fight, and they're the types of strategies that we're going to be talking about later on in our modules. The way we give people those strategies is we work with them in developing, and not only we, but I'm sure you can and other people do, work with them to developing a thing called the resilient mindset. Now, a resilient mindset quickly contains a number of items. First of all is the one about acceptance of yourself. The next one is about listening to your little voices, what we call having a positive self-talk. And each of these elements of the resilient mindset are topics that we're talking about as part of our webinar series in 2013. It's about the things that push your buttons and how you respond. It's our reactions, as I say, that causes stress. I don't like the word stress. I think there's a lot of stress has got a bad gig because it is a very positive. It can be used as a very positive thing. It's how you react to the symptom that causes you stress. So it goes back to the flight or fight stuff. But you've got to understand what pushes your buttons and how you respond. Some of the other skills in terms of resilient mindset is having empathy. It's about communication strategies, and I think that's about module 4 of our workshops this year. It's about having robust decision-making mechanisms. It's about dealing with mistakes, dealing with successes. I still work with individuals who achieve something wonderful, and they say to me, "Dennis, I was just lucky." I'm sure luck played a part in it, but there's also a fair amount of hard work and your own efforts. Being reinforced in the environment you're in, being supported, feel loved, feel valued, feel that you're contributing, and then finally following through and maintaining a resilient life. So look, they're the modules. And as we go through these modules, I'm going to help work with you on your own resilience, and hopefully we'll give you the skills. Well, I know we'll be able to give you the skills for you to work with other people and building their resilience. My observation is when people go through their life, we go through, it might even be an issue-based thing, you know, as well as a life journey. We go through certain stages of our life in terms of our resilience. And I call it, in the 4 stages I call it is, first of all, the dependent stage. And that is, I'm going to be resilient when something else happens. Or I'm feeling this like this because of. It's a third person. I'm not taking responsibility for my behaviour. Next one is, I call it the rebel stage. It says, look, privately I know I'm in a bit of strife, I've got a few problems, but I'm okay, I don't want to talk about it, I'll do it myself, leave me alone. You know, they're the rebel. Sometimes difficult to work with, but, you know, it's a tough stage to be in. And a lot of the blokes I'm talking with, and listen, I know I'm getting some questions here, I'll try and answer the questions as we go. Because there's been a few issues about kids, questions about kids, which I will come back. I'm actually going to talk about one of the specific modules with children. There are a few questions here that have been raised that I'm going to go offline and talk to you about later on. I'm just looking at the men at the stage. How many men are in the rebel? There's another stage called the acceptance stage. Understand this stuff is real. That, you know, I've got a few issues about resilience in my own life and starting to take responsibility for them. And the last stage is what I used to call this stage the magnet stage, where people take responsibility for looking after themselves, their family, their mates and their business. And I used to call it the magnet stage because they're the positive people. And what happens to the positive people is they attract positive people. And because they attract positive people, they have positive people in the environment, and that's reinforced their positiveness. So it's like the magnet. I stopped calling it magnet because my kid, she gave it a funny look when I talked about it. But it's that stage where people take responsibility for looking after themselves, their family, their mates, and their businesses. Now, when you look at those stages when it comes to your own resilience, where are you? Where's your partner? Where's your kids? Where's your friends? And I think the journey is a natural journey. We need to give people strategies and skills to walk along that journey. And look, speaking personally, I know I've been in all 4 stages. Look, there's a bit of a technique in terms of resilience. One of the key things, and this is going to be our module in March, it's about the importance of self-image and self-talk. Because one of the issues that's so critical in terms of our resilience is how you think, feel and behave with yourself. How you think is how you behave, is how you interact, is what you get back. So how do you think and feel about yourself? Do you think and feel about yourself in positive and negative terms? And if so, what evidence is there to support that? And are you able and willing to change how you think and feel? And again, like I say, this is module 2. And understand the mind is 100% convincible. I can convince your mind to do anything, as you can too. And that's the secret of another technique we're going to give you in module 2. To demonstrate this, as a quick exercise, I want you to think about a major change or challenge that you have faced or like to achieve in your life. When you think about that major change, what do you hear yourself say? Do you hear yourself talk in positive terms or negative terms? And if it is negative, is it realistic? And if it is negative, can it be reframed? One of the techniques we'll talk about next week or next month I should say, is the reframing process. How do you do that? What are the skills for doing that? Is another way of focusing on that. Okay, look, that's enough content besides this bonus material I want to give you. In front of us, that's enough content for today, but look, there's our webinars scheduled for 2013. Now, the way we're doing these webinars this year, it's the first Monday of every month. It's the first Monday. Now, I was going to call it the first working Monday, but you'll see April 1 is Easter Monday, but I thought we may as well just do it then anyway. All these will be recorded, obviously, and we will be making them available on our website, which I'll talk about a little bit in a moment. But there's our topics: change your mind, change your life. It doesn't have to be, it is what it is. Communication strategies to thrive on stress, resilient strategies for change, dealing with mistakes and success, the value of compassion, energy and empathy. October is about self-discipline and self-control. November 4 is the 5 planks. December 2 is working with others. Now you'll see there the sort of the fine print. The subject, depending on feedback and issues, we might change it, but if we do, all attempts will be made to inform people of changes. So look, there's the schedule. Look, I wanted to be, by way of ending up, to give you a bit of a bonus material. And the context of this bonus material happened in January this year when I was actually in Adelaide, and I was reading and listening and hearing about the bushfires on the eastern states, and I'd had a fair amount to do with the Black Saturday bushfire recovery strategy, and I just know the pain that those people would have been going through, and I felt actually absolutely impotent to do anything. So I thought, well, at least what I can do is send out some material, send a letter out, send resources out. I sent it to various clients over east, and the ABC picked it up, as did a few newspapers. So you hopefully would have seen a bit of this stuff. But it's bonus material for you in terms of resilience for people facing natural disasters. One of my clients up in Queensland now is using this. We'll restructure a little bit for the flood victims, but it is for people facing natural disasters. So there are 2 letters I actually prepared and sent out, and which I will send out with a copy of this webinar. That's some advice for people facing natural disasters. The first piece of advice is to stay safe, and by what I mean by that is, I know people want to help out. I know people want to do things. I know there is still a macho attitude in some of the clients I work with, but I want to tell you, without being blunt about it, you're far better off not being the hero and being alive as opposed to being dead. So look after yourself, your family, and your friends' well-being. Make the decision about leaving or staying. Think about what's good for your family. There is a natural tendency to fight and defend, but you've got to make it cool. Next one is accept help. By that, governments are providing emergency cash aids now. I know a lot of my clients won't accept help, at least certainly financial help, because they think someone else is worse off than themselves, and they typically are. But I always say to them, look, you've been paying taxes all your life. Here's just a bit of the benefits of that. So work with Centrelink, Salvation Army, and other agencies to understand what's on, and accept it, because look, what goes around comes around. This time next year will be someone else. Next critical piece of advice for people facing natural disasters: focus on what you can control and accept what you can't. This thing has happened right now. It might be the time to sit back and let other people and other authorities do what they have to do to keep people safe. They're doing their job. What you have to do is focus on people, on the things you can control. And part of that is understanding that you will go through a period of extreme frustration. You won't be able to do. So the trick is, when you can't do, is to plan. Put all your energies into planning in terms of how you're going to cope with this next period, the rebuilding period. So when you can do, everyone will know what they've got to do, when they've got to do it, how they've got to do it, and everyone will be totally prepared. Talk to your providers. Talk to your financial people. Talk to your agronomist, if you need be, or your suppliers. People are as keen to get you back on your feet as you are to get yourself back on your feet. Don't push people away. It's really important that we involve people in our recovery strategies. It is what it is, and that's all it is. And by that, what I mean is, if you have suffered a natural disaster, it's not some mystical force having a crack at you, or not a karma coming back. It is just a natural disaster, and you've been part of it. And that's all it is. It's all part of living. So accept it for what it is, and then really, that's what it is. Remember your inner voice. Remember to keep your positive voice up. I know people, especially in Queensland, going through floods, they must be saying, how much more of this can I take? You've got to turn that inner voice around. That's part of this reframing stuff. Watch your kids. Be straight with them in terms of telling them what's going to happen. How you interact with your kids, especially the younger ones, will influence how they deal with challenging times for the rest of their life. And I also say, will probably influence your relationship with them for the rest of their life too. Be upfront. Talk about what has happened, what is going to happen, show emotion, and give structure. I think as long as we give kids structure, they'll be able to cope. Watch your mates. This is the time for us to be able to go and talk to our friends and make sure they're okay. Get busy. Remember that the real challenge to our emotions is not now. It's in 3 months' time. That's when everyone else is gone, you know. That's the time to build a community together. That's the time to catch up with mates. That's the time to talk about what's happening and how people are coping with it. Next strategy is give. I know this might feel strange for people who are going through natural disasters, but one of the good things about giving is you know that you are being able to contribute, and you also know other people aren't as, you're probably better off than other people. And finally, understand that you will survive this. It is it's happened. Be prepared to move on. Okay, I sent that letter out. I've got an enormous response, I've got to say. I've got a really moving response, telephone call actually, from a lady who was the wife of a volunteer. And she said, look, a couple of years ago, my husband was on the other side of the district doing fire management work. Fire came through our place, damaged it. He came back, felt guilty, felt angry, withdrew, and all that type of stuff. This year it's happened again. And she said to me, Dennis, what is the advice that you can give me and other partners of volunteers who have been caught up in this situation? Well, it's a great question. The more I asked around my contacts within the emergency services, I realised that it's probably an area that we hadn't focused on. So here's some advice for volunteers who are helping to fight natural disasters. First of all, don't panic. So your partners might have seen some really bad things, and certainly they've been working long hours. What they might need to do is just sleep it off. Don't panic. Next thing is, though, remember to celebrate the fact that your partner is big enough to help other people out in crises. I think it's a wonderful human characteristic that whilst we're prepared to do bad things to each other, also prepared to help out in times of crises. Appreciate those efforts. Recognising the issue of volunteerism, though, is a family issue and needs to be talked about as a family issue. Understand that also, that your partner may have seen the best and unfortunately the worst of human behaviour. Some people do bad things during this period of time. And I mean, one of the examples of this person I was telling you about, he was abused by the community because he was doing his operational responsibility of keeping people safe. I know that affected him dramatically. But look, if you are concerned about the person's behaviour, my advice is you say to them, look, I want to talk to you about this behaviour, give them the heads up, and then call the behaviour. Say things like, Bill, how are you feeling? I think you may be feeling this. Is that correct? Can we talk about it? The rest of us don't feel that, and we don't want you to. We would prefer that you didn't, or worse to that effect. You know, give people warning. You want to have the conversation. Think about whether you can use the in-house support mechanisms of those, because those in-house organisations might have their own EAP, employee assistance provider. Maybe they're available to you. Engage and network with families within the community who've been through the same type of thing. You know, share knowledge. Celebrate the end of the season. When everything is settled down, I always reckon have a barbecue, have a few beers, have a few wines, and just congratulate each other for the work they've done. Think about whether the person, the volunteer, should go back to the firefighting or the volunteer role. Sometimes maybe they've just had enough and it's worthwhile putting their energy somewhere else. But critically, don't ignore the issue. It's very worthwhile that you talk about things and make sure they don't become hidden under the stuff you don't talk about. So look, there's some ideas for you. Very quickly in closing, what else does Lessons Learned Consulting do? The types of things we do is we have our thing called our unplugged service. By unplug, what I mean is I'm often asked by people to just be able to come and talk to me about what's happening in their world, and to give them some advice around resilience. No theory, no strategy, just a one-on-one conversation. I'm calling it our unplugged, as opposed to what my kids initially called it, unhinged. We offer workbooks to outline practical advice. I'm very excited to announce we're creating our CDs and DVDs outlining resilience strategies, and I'll launch one in a moment. Obviously, we do training programs with organisations and communities, and we also do the coaching and support to individuals, families, and organisations. So we're around. One of the things we're going to do this year is interview people who have been displaying what I call lived experiences. And there's one person who's listening to me tonight that I will be talking to as part of my interview list. But just people to talk about what they did, what they went through, just to understand that, look, you don't have to be famous or rich or or anything else. This is a normal thing, whatever that is, of course. And people do cope. And it's interesting to listen to people, what they did on their journey. One of the things that we have done is introduced our CD series, and ladies and gentlemen, with great pleasure, I introduce our audio CD series, our first one. Our first CD calling 5 Steps to Personal Resilience. It goes for about half hour. It's me talking about our five critical steps for personal resilience. The first of a series of workshops or CDs we'll be releasing in our DVDs. $20. You can get them from just kind of the contact me or my email, which I'll give to you in a moment. Just to cover production costs. Very proud of them. We'll get better as we do them, but I think they're a good start. So look, can I just say thank you very much for listening. If you want to contact me further, there's my name, my mobile, my email address, my Twitter account. You've got to get into Twitter. And there's our website. Our website was hacked the other night by some group over in Sri Lanka, which I don't know is a compliment or a pain or whatever. But we're releasing that, refreshing, I should say. Hopefully that'll be done even by the end of this week. And all that will be all our webinars, will be all our resources that people can access. So can I say thank you for your attendance? There's now 34 of the 38 members still listening to me, so I appreciate it very much. I'll let you go and listen to Q&A tonight. Hopefully we'll see you again or speak with you again in early March. I'll be sending advertisements out to LinkedIn and Facebook and all those other resources. And I'm certainly welcome you inviting other people who you think might benefit from being involved with this webinar. Thanks very much, and all the best. And if there's anything I can do for you in the meantime, please give me a call. Otherwise, I'll hopefully speak with you in early March. All the best. Bye-bye.